Hello, everyone. This is the Chicago Election Podcast with your host, Wasim Sahwel. And today, we are here to talk about the mayoral candidates. The reason we are doing this podcast is because when we did some research around Taft High School, we found out that most, if not all, students around our age do not really know about the mayoral election. And they really don't know, if they were going to vote, what mayor to vote. We created this podcast to allow students to be informative about the mayoral election, the mayoral candidates, and allow them to choose who they want to vote. Gary Chico is a Democrat who is mainly running for universal rights among everyone and to make a better education system to help out our children in the long run. The reason why people believe that he is great for this job and believe that he will further benefit our education system is because that he was a previous chairman of education for Illinois. This isn't Gary Chico's first attempt to run for mayor in Chicago. He has attempted to run in previous elections and lost. Today, we will be looking at two sides of Gary Chico. We'll be looking at the people who are against Gary Chico and the people who are for Gary Chico. Another reason that the author claims that the commercial that Chico was starring in is odd is that Chico was selling himself as a Latino for only the second time in his life, and it doesn't actually appear in the clip until the very end in a still image. While the author is not doubting Chico's ethnic claims, his father was a Mexican immigrant, and his family had long roots in the community, but with only two times Chico has made his ethnicity clear, or pretended to have some claim in Latinidad, as he says, has been in his two runs for public office, now and in 2004. So basically what the author is trying to say here is that Chico is just attempting to use his, I guess you would say, Latino background to try to, I guess, persuade other Latinos to vote for him. But he hasn't said anything about him being Latino unless it was for public office. So I believe that the author's claiming is that he thinks that Chico is just using it as a front. He doesn't want him to basically... Oh my... Okay, the first source that we'll be looking at is a web article on the website called WBEZ91. And this article is against Gary Chico. The author of this article, his name is Achi Obihas. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I'm not very good at reading names. But Well, we'll see what he has to say. So, to summarize what this article is saying, is that every single time the author sees or hears about Gary Chico's commercial, he is amazed by it. Because Congress Luis Gutierrez looks straight at the camera and talks about what a great guy Chico is, and how he will get things done. He thinks it's a bit of a theater for a number of reasons. As he says in his article, is that there's the Gutierrez endorsement itself. He thinks that the mainstream media batted around as if Luis could snap his fingers and deliver all 15% of Chicago's Hispanic voters. It means a lot less than it seems. It has to do a lot more with Gutierrez than with Chico, as it says in the article. But the author says, let's be clear. Gutierrez is backing Chico because he needs a horse in this race. And the other three candidates were out of the question. Basically, the author believes that Gutierrez is only using Chico because of the four people who are in this race. He believes that Chico is the best one for him. Now, I do. So, today we'll be looking at this article that is against Gary Chico. The web article is from www.wbez.org, and the author of it is Achi Obejas? I'm sorry if I butchered it. I really don't know how to read this. So, this article was created in February 18th, 2011, and it was one of the few articles I could find that talks about how he is against Gary Chico, and we will be looking at it. So, we're going to summarize a little bit of the article, then I will put some of my input against it, and then after this we will go to another article supporting Gary Chico and seeing if any information conflicts or if there is some truth to these web articles. Okay, keep in mind while I am summarizing this entire article, I will be taking a few few quotes directly from the article. So if it seems like I'm just reading off of it, it's because I am, and I just want you to get the clearest picture. Okay, so let us begin. So basically, in the beginning, the author, Achi Obejas, I'm just gonna call him Achi for simplicity's sake. Achi says that every single time that he sees or hears Gary Chico's commercial targeting Latinos, he is amazed. In it, he says that Congressman Luis Gutierrez looks straight at the camera and talks about what a great guy Chico is and how he will get things done. He thinks it's a bit of a theater for a number of reasons. The first reason that he gives us is that this is about the Gutierrez endorsement itself. Mainstream media, as he says, batted around as if Luis could snap his fingers and deliver all 15% of Chicago's Hispanic voters. I know it means a lot less than it seems, but he says it has a lot more to do with Gutierrez than with Chico. So basically, what I believe in these first two paragraphs on the website is that the first reason he's trying to give us is that Congressman Luis Gutierrez is attempting to give a false impression of Chico by saying, or not a false impression, a theater, like a play, a fake stance, or I really don't know how would you call it, but he is trying to say that Gutierrez is basically using Chico as a, I guess you would say, an as a front, or not as a front. You know what? I'll just say advertisement because I guess it's the closest thing I can think of right now. Forgive me. He's using Chico like an advertisement. Basically, he's trying to inflate Chico's like influence. He's trying to use him to connect with Chicago Hispanic voters for some reason. And yeah, and apparently that he is also suspicious of the Gutierrez endorsement itself. And he thinks that mainstream media bats it around, like as if again Luis could snap his fingers and bring all the Chicago's Hispanic voters into it, and we'll see why. So he says, "Let's be clear. Gutierrez is backing Chico because he needed a horse in this race, and the three are out of the question. The other three, I'm sorry, were out of the question." So, apparently, in the beginning, in this specific paragraph, he says that the reason why Gutierrez is backing Chico is because he wants somebody that he can. Or no, let me phrase that. He's trying to say that Gutierrez is using Chico as a sort of, I guess, an influence that he can control inside this mayoral race. And I think he chose Chico specifically, or based on what the author says. I believe that Gutierrez would choose Chico because the other three were apparently not, like, were not in question. They were completely out of the question. He didn't want to use them for some reason. And yeah, I have no idea why. Let's keep going. The author keeps continuing, saying that Rahim Amuel is an anathema to Luis because of his role in the Obama administrative regressive immigration policies. Huh. Gutierrez has been along enough to know how unreliable Caro Molesi Braun is, and he and Miguel de Valle, both Puerto Ricans, have been nursing schoolyard grudges since the early 80s. Okay. I cannot really say anything about this paragraph because I do not know enough about it, but what I got the general sense of it is that, again, Gutierrez is using Chico as a way to get into the mayoral election. Not himself, but as somebody he can use into the mayoral election. He apparently couldn't, he thought the other three were out of the question. So, yeah. Okay, we're just gonna move on. The other reason the author claims is that the commercial is so odd that Chico is selling himself as a Latino for only the second time in his life. But it actually does not appear in the clip until the very end. And it's a still image. And yeah, so I've actually searched up this commercial that the author's talking about. It took a while, but when I found it, I actually noticed that as well. Basically, the few commercials that Chico has made in, they're weird. So this isn't the first time, as I said in the beginning, that Chico has attempted to run for in the mayoral election. And yeah, I haven't seen any news articles or anything in the news, honestly, about him like attempting to say that he's Latino, unless it was in the commercials, which was weird. I also noticed it, but for the second time in his life, I have no idea what was the first time. I've seen it in the most recent, but I don't know about the original, like the first time he's uh was running for mayoral election in the mayoral election. So we're gonna move on. So, um, in this next paragraph, the author says that, as I quote, the Gutierrez commercial, which make what makes the Gutierrez commercial even curiouser. That's weird. There's the congressman at ease chatting away in Spanish, and Chico was silent and static, looking up and away. Hmm. Perhaps Chico didn't want to speak his broken Spanish on camera, claims the not claims, inquires the author, but it even I would have to agree it does seem absurd when Mark Kirk was willing to, as I quote, hablar español, says the author, and the author frankly states that no one expects second generation immigrants like Chico to speak it perfectly, but even I have to say that if you're saying that you're Latino in your public elections, but you just stay silent when someone's talking to you in Spanish. I mean, even Mark Kirk was willing to try to speak Spanish towards him, the congressman. I'm not. It doesn't say which congressman that he was talking to, and I honestly don't know if I could find it. But if I find it, I will say later in the second episode of the series. So we'll move on. But again, Chico, if you're trying to basically attempt to portray that you're Latino, but don't um, but don't don't try to speak Spanish at all, then yeah, you're kind of like uh, not hypocritical, but you're kind of like confusing people or confusing me at least. Okay. The author also goes on that he does not doubt Chico's ethnic claims. His father was a Mexican immigrant, Chico's father, I'm sorry, and Chico's family has long roots in the community. But even so, apparently Chico has made his the only has made his ethnicity clear or pretended to have some claim in Latina dad. I'm sorry if I butchered that again. In his two runs for public office. So, only two times, apparently. This year, or I'm sorry, this mayoral election, and the one in 2004, when he ran against Barack Obama, and a handful of others in the US Senate. That's apparently not a big surprise in both cases. Now and again, as the author says, being Latino has certain advantages. Well, as I would say, this entire paragraph kind of makes me suspicious against Chico's ethnic claims because when I watched the commercial, the one that he put out for this mayoral election, I did notice that he claimed he was Latino at the very end. I did notice that. I didn't really think much of it, but when the author started claiming that, he only said that he was Latino when he's in the mayoral election, he's trying to become mayor. I now have some sort of not prejudice. Let me try to think of the right word. I guess you would say suspicion against Chico because why would he only say he's Latino when he's running for public office. He said only once in 2004 and once like right now in this mayoral election. And yeah, so I've done some research online, and the news articles and the news, I could not find a single time where Chico has ever said that he was Latino outside of the public office, which is weird. But we're gonna keep going on and finish this article. So we're gonna move on. So, in this next paragraph, the author says that, as I quote, the Gutierrez commercial, what makes the Gutierrez commercial even curiouser. That's weird. There's the congressman at ease chatting away in Spanish, and Chico was silent and static, looking up and away. Perhaps Chico didn't want to speak his broken Spanish on camera, inquires the author, but even I would have to agree, it does seem absurd when Mark Kirk was willing to, as I quote, hablar español, says the author, and the author frankly states that no one expects second-generation immigrants like Chico to speak it perfectly, but even I have to say that if you're saying that you're Latino in your public elections, but you just stay silent when someone's talking to you in Spanish. I mean, even Mark Kirk was willing to try to speak Spanish towards him, the congressman. It doesn't say which congressman that he was talking to, and I honestly don't know if I could find it, but if I find it, I will say later in the second episode of the series. So we'll move on, but again, Chico, if you're trying to basically attempt to portray that you're Latino, but don't but don't try to speak Spanish at all, then yeah, you're kind of like not hypocritical, but you're kind of like confusing people, or confusing me at least. Okay. So we move on, and in the next paragraph, the author says, and I quote, "At the end of the commercial, we're left with the feeling that Chico wants just enough identification from the viewer, but not too much closeness. To be seen as a Latino leader by Hispanics, they may predisposed to vote for him, but not to be seen talking to Hispanics as one of them." That's wow. Okay. So basically what the author's claiming right here is that Chico is attempting to at least put himself in between. So he basically wants to look like the leader of the Hispanics, but isn't he's trying to be the leader of Hispanics but not be Hispanic. I'm trying to say this like the best way as possible. I'm sorry. I'm kind of butchering this or making this kind of confusing. I do apologize. This is the first series. After all, I will try to do better. But yes, okay. So apparently, this is what I understand, that he is trying to again be the leader of the Hispanics, of the Latino leader. So they would vote for him because he's Latino, but he doesn't want to be seen talking to them. Okay. The third paragraph that we go into goes in saying that it's no surprise. I quote, "There is no surprise when you consider that Gary Chico, Latino, though he maybe, is really the default white candidate in this mayoral contest. not because of any doubts about his ethnicity, but because he represents. He's bought and sold by the traditional white interest in Chicago. Wow, okay. So the author is trying to say that even though Gary Chico is Latino and he's showing that he's Latino only in his mayoral elections, he's saying that he's being like paid off to represent white interests in Chicago. And then he just keeps going on, and I quote, "In other words, whatever is left of the old democratic machine." Okay, so yeah, so apparently the author is just saying that Gary Chico is apparently just trying to pretend he wants to be a leader of the Hispanics, but doesn't actually want to be seen talking to them or make other people think that he's actually Hispanic or something like that, and that he's actually being paid. He's being bought and sold to basically like represent the traditional white interests in Chicago. Basically, whatever is left of the old democratic machine. Okay, I'm not really gonna I guess speculate or not speculate. I'm not really gonna give my opinion on this because, again, just reporting to you both sides right now. But of Gary Chico, we're gonna see about the people who are against, the people who are for, and we'll get back to this after we read the second article that I have of Gary Chico who's supporting him. But let's continue on with this article and get to the end. So the author goes to saying that if you scan the archives of the local newspaper, whether it's the Tribune or the Reader, Gary Chico's name starts popping up in the early 90s. At almost the same time, Mayor Richard M. Daley Daily? I think that's a type. I'm sorry. I'm reading the article. I'm trying to quote him right now, but it just says Daily, which is weird. But yeah. So Mayor Richard M. Daley named him the Deputy Chief of Staff, and then he goes on to saying a few articles mentioned his Mexican father, but no one points out, least of all Chico, that he's a Latino from back of the yards. I don't understand what he means by back of the yards. Does it mean that he's not a true Latino? He's I don't know. But I guess we can just apparently that the old mayor was giving him a position of power or something. I'm not really sure what this paragraph was trying to point out, but we'll get back to it if we find some more evidence to at least try to figure out what he's trying to say here. So we'll move on to the next paragraph. So the author continues saying that Chico's supporters have told him that because Chico transcends race, listen here, transcends race, that he does not depend on his race, that his talent gets him places. The author doesn't really state where he got this information or where he interviewed these people, but so I would take this as a grain of salt. But if this is true that they say he didn't depend on his race, that his talent gets him places, I would ask that this kind of conflict. Okay, let me rephrase this. It kind of conflicts with the information that the author was showing, because as I said before, I noticed when in the commercial that Chico showed for the mayoral election that he did it. He only said he was Latino at the very end, and when the author pointed out that he only said he was Latino in his mayoral elections, this kind of rubs me the wrong way, because if he does not attempt to use, he doesn't depend on his race, he's not trying to say, because he's Latino, that he should get play. Or no, sorry, I'll rephrase this. That since he doesn't depend on his race, so he doesn't depend that he's Latino, but his talent gets him places. It doesn't make any sense because in the mayoral election he keeps saying he's Latino, but then later he just when he's not in the mayoral election he just doesn't say anything. He just acts normal. But only when it's the mayoral election that he says he's Latino, that he's just trying to spread it everywhere. He's trying to make himself look like the leader of the Latinos, and yeah. So this doesn't make any. I don't know if this is false, but yeah. Apparently, the author says that Chico supporters that says that he doesn't use race, but again he's been using race. So yeah, we'll just keep going. So he just keeps saying that. There's a quote. Then going Latino seems both regressive and opportunistic. Never mind the fantasy that anyone in Chicago could actually transcend race. So the author is showing this belief that anyone in Chicago could actually transcend race, that they could have just, do it without trying to, bring their race into it, but he doesn't believe it. So, yeah, okay, so this is we're about halfway through the article, and most of the article just keeps going on about how Chico keeps using his race to get into higher positions, and yeah, he doesn't really give, I guess you could say, information about how he used his quote unquote Latino status to get into these positions. It just says that, for example, in the article, I quote, in 1987, just as Harold Washington consolidated his forces, Gary Chico left City Hall to work for a law firm that deep ties the Democratic machine. He specialized in zoning and made lots of money. It doesn't say anything about how he used his Latino influence to get into it, and yeah, so it really doesn't make any sense beyond this. It just keeps going about what he did afterwards. So I'm reading through the rest of this article. There's nothing really that shows at all. It just the most notable part right here that is that Gary Chico went onto the board of education to follow the example of his machine patrons and get rich, and it just keeps showing statistics about how how his clients made $505,000. Yeah. Oh. Before we go to the next article, the one that supports Chico, I gotta say that the last notable thing I would say about this article is that it says right here, and I quote this: Chico had so many conflicts of interest at the board that he abstained 359 different votes. He'd like us to think those abstaining underscore his ethical conduct. What they actually did was underscore how deeply enmeshed his board and law practice were in classic machine style. So I'm gonna read the next paragraph because it helps break apart this paragraph, a little bit easier to explain. So this next paragraph says, excuse me, quote unquote, what they show is a machine man learning from the most nuanced of the tools of the trade to do one thing and then look any skeptic in the eye and bold-faced lie by calling it something else. So the author is saying that Chico was basically lying to people, saying that those abstinences underscore, quote unquote, underscore his ethic conduct, but what he's actually doing is just lying to people in classic machine style. So yeah, that's basically all. That's all like the more all like the important parts of this article, and in part two. So basically, we're going to be splitting in the series. This is what's going to happen in the series.